Sorry.
Okay, so it's 7:04. We give 1 more minute. Hello, Brooklyn. We have somebody from Brooklyn. And Aikiko is joining us from Japan. Okay, a few more people are coming in. So we will ask everyone to mute their mics and ask questions through chat. Giovanna and I will be reading your questions. Giovanna is our programming librarian. She organized this program. I'm Galina Charnik, library director. White Plains is here. Okay, so we have a lot of people. Okay, so it's 7:05. Let's start. Please join us for a wonderful summer reading panel discussion today. And this is our summer reading event based on Susie Orman Schnell novel, We Came Here to Shine. Susie Orman Schnell is author of 4 novels. Her latest book, We Came Here to Shine, is a historical novel set in 1939 New York City World's Fair. This book was selected for our adult and teen summer reading program, and Susie became our library's summer reading ambassador. We Came Here to Shine is a remarkable novel about challenges women face and the courage they must summon in order to lead their lives. So all the programs in the summer related to Susie's book. And today we have a panel discussion, and I would like to introduce our moderator, Laura Cayton.
Hi, everyone.
Laura is keynote speaker, author, consultant, communication coach, and founder president of New York-based professional development training company, Cayton Consulting. Laura travels over 100 days a year for speaking engagement. She divides her time giving keynote talks at various conferences across North America, leading group training program and facilitating one-on-one coaching sessions in 4 key topics: executive presence, communication skills, individual and team presentation, and business social etiquette. Cayton's latest book, The Communication Habit, Strategies That Set You Apart and Leave a Lasting Impression, is available on Amazon. And I will be posting information about all our panelists' books and how to get them on Amazon. And I want to show, Laura's book. Here's her book, and you can see it on the background behind Laura. And I kind of feel under pressure because I need to do a presentation about our panelist speakers. After reading Laura's book, I'm so nervous, but it was very helpful. I highly recommend it. And I need to mention Susie's book. This is our summer reading book, We Came Here to Shine. And now I let Giovanna to start introducing our panelists.
Hello and welcome. It's my pleasure to introduce 2 of our speakers tonight. We have Juliet Grames, who was born in Hartford, Connecticut, and grew up in a tight-knit Italian-American family. A book editor, she has spent the last decade at Soho Press, where she is an associate publisher and curator of the Soho Crime imprint. Her first novel, The 7 or 8 Deaths of Stella Fortuna, was published last year and has been translated into over a dozen languages. It was released in paperback this May. And this is also Juliet's second presentation and program with us at the Harrison Public Library.
Hi, everybody. It's absolutely my honor to come back. The first one was so wonderful, so thank you for having me, Giovanna and Galina.
It's our pleasure. You said anytime we can call you, so we took you up on your invitation. Professor Laurie Soderlind is the director of the MFA Creative Writing Program at Manhattanville College in Purchase, New York. Her most recent memoir, The Change, My Great American Postindustrial Midlife Crisis Tour, was released in June of this year. Her first book, also memoir, was Chasing Montana, a love story. Her essays have been published in numerous journals and anthologies, including Norton's anthology of best creative nonfiction. Welcome.
Hi, everyone, and thank you very much. Glad to be here.
And I would like to introduce Randi Gray, who is our Harrison Public Library Board of Trustee member, and also as a senior IT manager at the education tech company. Randi has over 20 years of experience in various facets of IT industry, including retail, financial technology, and healthcare. She served on numerous boards, including the foundation board of the Paris Foundation and the president of the North Manhattan Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, and is a member of the Junior Board for Family Services of Westchester.
Thank you for having me this evening. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
So a special good evening to everybody. We are delighted you decided to spend your Thursday evening with us, and welcome to Women Raising Their Voices. As Galina mentioned, I am a communications speaker and specialist, and my expertise lies specifically in helping individuals to communicate with confidence, clarity, and credibility through the words that they choose, the body language they use, the actions they take, and the decisions they make. And so our goal tonight is to make this session about you. We're going to answer some tough questions, how women and men can be heard, can raise their voices. We're going to focus primarily on women. We're going to leave you with some strategies that you can use immediately to succeed and to benefit in you as you navigate your own world, professionally and personally. We're going to start in a few minutes. I'll start with my first question, and we're going to conclude at 8 o'clock tonight. So we don't have a lot of time to get a lot of great content in. If you haven't told us in the chat box where you are zooming in from, please do. I know that we have some authors who are viewing tonight. We have some authors on the panel. So it's a wonderful exchange. Also, we care about what's important to you. So in the chat box, any questions that come up, anything that you want to know on the topics we touch on or beyond, please type them and we'll be fielding them as we go through the evening. Okay, so let's jump right in. I have some wonderful panelists with us tonight, and I'd like to ask this first question to all of you, which is, what does women raising their voices mean to you? Can we start with Juliet first?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Laura. So as Galina mentioned, I'm both a publishing professional and I'm also an author. So for me, I've dedicated my own life to, raising my own voice, and the novel that I wrote, The 7 or 8 Deaths of Stella Fortuna, is specifically about overlooked women's history and trying to rediscover the histories and the lost legacies of our grandmothers, as they may have been suppressed in order to protect the legacies and reputations of our grandfathers. So it's a book about women and about women's voices and raising them. And as a publishing professional, I happen to work in an industry that has many female executives who make a lot of decisions about media, and yet still we struggle all the time with making sure that women's voices are equally represented. And it's been a point of pride for me to dedicate my career to trying to lift voices that are being that are not given as much amplification as they should. So that's what it means to me. It's a big part of my life.
Wonderful. So constantly supporting women in this realm. Great. Could we hear from Laurie or Randi?
I'm happy to jump in. This is Laurie. I also work in fields that I've been really fortunate to be able to help raise women's voices, both in my education career and running a creative writing program, but also before that I worked in journalism for many years. And you know, there's a self-confidence issue in the workplace generally, but also in writing. So this kind of, dovetails with what Juliet was saying, that she spent her career in publishing to help raise women's voices. I've kind of had the opportunity to work with the women themselves to encourage them that they actually have a voice, and that what they have to say matters, and that they can learn the tools to raise their voices. I've done that as an editor, coaching reporters. I've done that as a teacher in a classroom. I've done it in directing this MFA program at Manhattanville. And I just would conclude, my opening salvo by saying that in all those fields, interestingly, more and more women are coming into journalism. They're coming into, they've always been in teaching, but they're populating the MFA programs in larger and larger numbers. We know that women are reading, they read more than men, according to the statistics, right? So it just has kind of turned out that these areas that I've been working in, I've been trying to help women find their self-esteem and their sense of deserving to have their voices be heard in very sort of woman-centric fields. So that's been a big part of my life that I didn't expect to be a big part of my life, but it just turns out that it is.
Before we ask Randi to share her thoughts, Laurie, you said something very interesting. You said that the confidence issues, helping women just to understand that they're deserving, right? That they should feel confident to have that voice. Is there a strategy? Is there a thought for you around, for the women watching, for their colleagues, for their juniors or their team members? How can we help them to strengthen their confidence? Is there something specific we can start thinking about?
I think one of the messages that women get, whether directly or indirectly, is that what they have to say is somehow less important. That less is expected of women in many settings, and when less is expected of you, you're going to rise to the bar that's been set for you, even if it doesn't feel true. So it seems to me that, it's been, I know for myself personally, it's been a lifelong struggle to know that wherever the world set the bar for me, if the world didn't expect much from me, I expected a lot from myself. And I have just never given up that. But I think it really, really helps when you have people in the workplace mentor you, or in the classroom mentor you, take interest in you and encourage you, so that you begin to feel like what you have to say has value. And when I say what you have to say, it's because I work with writers a lot, but I think it's true what women have to say sort of metaphorically as business leaders or engineers or whatever field that they might be in, that our expectations of them need to be higher, and we need to help push them along.
So two things that I really want to share with the audience that Laurie just said. One is, if you're lacking self-confidence, if somebody in your world needs their spirits buoyed, then finding a mentor, having a sponsor, an advocate can often do that for you. It can inspire you to understand how far you can go, or give you the help that you need. So that's a great first strategy. And the second one is really look inward. Use that self-motivation to understand that if somebody diminishes your bar, push past that. That's what I'm hearing Laurie say, which is great. Randi, I want to get to you. What are your thoughts about, through your lens, how do you interpret women raising their voices?
Thank you, Lauren. In my field, as an IT manager in a male-dominated field, you have no choice but to always be thinking about how to raise your voice. Many times you are the only woman in the room, And so you have to deal with the challenge that comes with that. And, you know, let the boys know that I'm here for a reason. I'm just as smart as you. And you can learn something from me. Raising your voice also means not only being heard at all times, but constantly trying to break barriers and shatter ceilings and let them know that we are equal. There is no hierarchy here. And it also means reaching back. So similar to what Laurie and both of you said, mentorship, letting youth know, letting young women know, raise your voice, teach them that from young so that they grow up with the mindset that they are equal and that no man is better than them, and that as a woman, you should never shrink, no matter what field you're in.
Great. And I was asked if I'm going to share my thoughts from a communication standpoint, so I'll do that now. Through my lens of communication, when it comes to women raising their voices, what I immediately think about is how we undermine, and this is for both men and women, specifically though women, because the research shows that we often undermine ourselves through what we say. And there are specific words and phrases that can dumb us down immediately when we're trying to do the exact opposite. Words like filler words, undermining words and phrases. Oh, I'm speaking too much, or this might be a stupid question, or you probably already thought this. Words such as weak words, I think, I feel, I believe. So there are definitely words and phrases, and I'm only touching on a few. If you want me to cover more while we're on the call together, ask me. I'm happy to share. Okay, good. So we have a couple of comments coming in I want to share with you. Representation, totally agree, Randi. Great point, Randi. It's very easy to get discouraged in the tech field. And so let me start with you, Randi, first, about being in this male-dominated world of IT.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're in that field, how do you self-promote? How do you find a way to brand yourself when you're in this sea of men? Do you find it easy because you distinguish yourself? Do you find that they poo-poo you or they suffocate your voice so that you're not branding yourself? Share a little bit about that.
Well, for me, lucky for me, early in my career, I was surrounded by a team of men that was really supportive. And that foundation gave me the confidence that I needed as I grew in my career to walk into any room and be put on any project and know that I was bringing 100% all of the time, and that there was nothing that was going to doubt me or my intelligence that I brought to this project. If it wasn't for that support and early on in my career of men supporting me and pushing me and letting me know that I could do it, I may not have had the success that I have now. As you know, in technology for women, the attrition rate is extremely high because there's no network, there's no support system. But establishing that early on is what allows me to continue to have the confidence, and also knowing that technology, as we all know, is all about innovation. And so you have to constantly be learning and growing. So if I'm not going to do the work, then I know I'm not going to be successful. So I have to put in that work so that I'm not, just acting when I walk in the room, that I do know what I'm talking about and I feel confident when I say it.
And so the support early on from your male colleagues was really important, and constantly learning and keeping up and being innovative.
Correct.
And was there something around that specifically that you did? Did you make a conscious choice to be visible, learning those new innovations? Did you chit chat with your colleagues so they knew what you were capable of? Share with us a conscious choice you made so that people knew the value you brought.
Sure. Definitely communication and building relationships in the workplace. It may not be the typical relationship because naturally outside of work, I have a ton of women friends. As we discussed before, I'm in a sorority, so I'm always surrounded by majority women. But being really thoughtful and intentional with the relationships that I built at work was really helpful in me growing the knowledge that I have, because once some of my male colleagues would start to see that I was genuinely interested in certain topics, or that I brought up a topic of something that was a trending topic in IT, then they were more likely to converse with me about different things coming out, or say, hey, Randi, did you hear about ... And they started to really take me serious and then nurture that. So again, just relationship building with those that you typically may not have a relationship with, because you would find that you also connected with them outside of the workplace. We all have families, we all have regular, everyday human being problems. And so just building that connection and keeping that connection even after I was long gone after that workplace.
It's great about maintaining the relationships once they've been built. Great. Juliet, I'd like to ask you, when you think about your career as an editor, and now congratulations with the published book that you have, you've come so far. As you look back on your career, was there something in particular that was a lesson learned that helped you to be as successful as you are now? Was there something you wish you knew when you first started your career that had somebody told you that cheat sheet, you could have exponentially moved quicker? Could you share a little bit about that for us?
You know, it's so funny that this is coming on the back of what Randi just said about networks. And, you know, Randi, I think you made a really powerful point about mentorship. And one thing I do not regret is having been involved in mentorship programs with other women from the beginning of my career. But for me, as I am a writer, and I always dreamed of being a writer, and that requires a lot of solitary work. And I think actually a lot of professions require really thoughtful solitary work, regardless of whether we are introverts or extroverts. And for me, the networking that was so necessary at the beginning of my career to feel safe, feel secure in my employment, to grow my career, to try to attain promotion, which was always frustrating and took more time than I hoped it would. I built up this huge network of relationships and social capital that I think helped me. It helped me get published, which is a little bit counterintuitive, but it also has a huge cost. And maintaining those relationships, as Randi said, becomes so important. And I think that for me, if I could go back and tell my younger self something, it would be to be so precious with your time and with the relationships that you're going to pursue. Make sure that the people that you're meeting and connecting with are going to care about you the way you care about them, and that the ones that you're really spending time on nurturing are ones that can help you in the long run. Because I think as we get deeper into our careers and we have more management responsibility, or you know, more people calling on us to join committees or to advise on boards or things like that, our responsibilities can grow to swallow what our original career goal was. And it's just so important to hold on to the thing that you loved, that made you passionate about this goal in the first place.
And so when I hear you speak, I think to myself, it's important that you're spring cleaning people also, because you're saying put your attention where it really matters, to people that are reciprocating that energy back to you.
Yeah, and I mean, I completely agree with Randi. It's the social capital aspect of those relationships is so high. It's just important to self-care about your time as well.
So let me ask this follow-up question, which is, in this world of virtual communication, when we're all so busy, right? We're constantly on Zoom calls. We're having young kids we have to entertain. Our kids are not going back to school. We have to homeschool them. Our time is so much more limited now. What are your thoughts around how to maintain that rapport, how to build those relationships that are so critical and important that you just mentioned when we don't have the time right now? Where do we put our efforts? Where do we put our focus?
I'm actually very poor at this, and I would love the advice of the other panelists, including you, Laura.
I'm happy to always share. Laurie, do you want to weigh in on how you've been maintaining relationships or building rapport in this very fast-paced, pressure and anxious, often world that we're living in?
You know, it's really funny. The first thing that came to my mind when you asked Juliet that question was, well, I'm doing it right now. You know, you have to say yes to the right things. It's important to try to say no to certain things that are really just going to take your time and energy. But, you know, welcoming into your life the things, especially in this time, but probably in all times, you know, maybe this is a hyper lesson, like a ninja lesson in choice making, right? But, you know, saying yes to things where they're not just resume builders. It's not just a line on my CV that says I participated in this panel or that, but paying attention to who the panelists are, note to self, you know, what their books are, what their histories are, and making connections kind of always is just, I'm just always doing that if I can be. And yeah, so during this time, I'm saying yes to things that help me remember what it is I love doing, and talking about my work life is one of those things. And I'm saying yes to things that will help me to continue building my network, even when I'm literally isolated from other human beings. But here we are. And if you don't mind, I'd like to circle back a little bit to some of the things that I heard Randi and Juliet talking about. Just to you know, certain things that really helped with success. I was hearing the importance of mentorship, and I want to share this because I think many people listening might be like me and say, you know, yeah, I always wanted a mentor, but the mentors just were not showing up for me. And that sometimes really is the case. I mean, you know, if you find opportunities to join organizations that are all about helping to build you up and build your network, that's great. If you find people in your workplace who take an interest in you and help you, that's awesome. But what if it's not happening? And for me, I'm afraid to say, I mean, I've always, you know, to this day, I would welcome my boss to spend more time with me if she could, but she's really busy. So who are our mentors along the way? If they don't show up, what do we do? So I just want to respond to that a little bit by saying that, you know, you have to do the work and you have to learn everything you can, and you have to kind of say yes to opportunities that make sense, that will teach you more about what you're trying to do. So that if nobody is coming along and showing you the ropes, which is so important, let me segue for a moment to say, if we are in a position to be able to actually teach people around us how to do what we're doing, please don't underestimate the importance of doing that for people. I feel like throughout my career, I keep getting into situations where it's like, okay, I'm here and nobody shows up to show me how to do what I'm supposed to do. So let's all be the people who remember to teach people, you know, what to do along the way. But for me, what I've found makes up for that often is just that I work really hard and I'm willing to do pretty much anything. I'm pretty much like, give me whatever the job is and I'll go kill it. You know, I'll just try really hard to do it. And then the new problem becomes, how do you not be a doormat and not be the person who gets every lousy assignment because they know you won't say no? So striking a balance, saying yes to things that help, working really hard, showing your willingness to work, and teaching yourself somehow if you are not, if the mentors aren't showing up. You know, those are some things that have been important to me in my career.
Great tips also about finding a mentor or figuring it out. From my perspective, building rapport comes down to all anybody wants from you is to be seen and heard. And when you truly see somebody and you truly listen to them, you build connection, you build trust, and you're a more effective communicator in the relationship. And so listening becomes incredibly important. And there are 4 elements of listening. There are 4 layers. And most people think that active listening is the highest level listening. It's not. It's empathic. The ability to deeply hear what somebody's saying and relate to it because you've either experienced the same or something similar. And so if you have that capability to put that on your radar, how you can be a conscious listener and someone who's empathic, especially now with what's happening in our virtual environment, with so many of us under the gun with how we're trying to navigate, that builds rapport tremendously.
Laura,
yeah, please.
We have a question, and I think Bridget's question resonates what are you saying.
Yes, we have a couple of questions. That's awesome. Let me read them. So first, hello, Charity. Good to see you. The question was to Juliet, how do you maintain these relationships without feeling disingenuous? Which is a really important piece for women. How do we not feel phony? How do we keep authentic while we're maintaining these relationships?
I don't have that problem. I'm very interested in people, and I always want to keep in touch with everyone I meet. So the disingenuousness is not a problem for me. It is overwhelm because I care about a lot of people. If I connect with someone, I usually want to know what happens in your story. And if only because novelists are predatorily like always looking at other people's stories, right? But I do care. So for me, the problem is squashing all of the people I care about into limited time and keeping in touch with everyone. And it became, especially, actually it's a little bit better in COVID because we're at home and we don't have to go out to see people. But one thing that became really important to me about a year ago, I started timing every morning. The first thing that I did was I would set a timer on my clock and make sure that I put that hour-long chunk into my own personal, private, introspective work without thinking about or contacting anyone else. And I knew that that meant that at the end of the day, I would have less time to tie up all the loose ends, but just to prioritize my own work and my own thoughts and concerns before I started opening myself up to other people was something that really helped me. It made my day shorter, and I needed to remember that my day was shorter than I had convinced myself that it was. So that would be my answer to Bridget's. Because people ask you for stuff endlessly, especially if you're like Laurie or Randi and you're working so hard and you're giving your best self to everything. They want your advice, and there's no compensation for that except goodwill, which is great. Goodwill is great, but it can come at the end of the day.
Perfect. Laurie or Randi, did you want to weigh in on how to be authentic when you're maintaining relationships, or how not to come across as disingenuous?
I would say in both my personal and professional relationships, just the nature of who I am, I'm an authentic person. So if the relationship is happening, then know that I'm going to be authentic in it. I don't maintain disingenuous relationships. I can separate or compartmentalize very well in regards to what's a business and professional relationship. And I'm always cordial and we will handle our business. But if I deeply care about you, and most of the people in my life, professional and personal, I do care about, especially now in these times, I do make a conscious effort to check in on people, whether it's virtually, whether it's through social media. But again, I am not a person that is of disingenuous relationships, and anyone that knows me knows that. So for me, it's not hard. While I am never rude, it's very clear when it's not a real relationship. If it's a business thing, then it's just a business thing, but everything else would fall under relationships. And I do a very good job at maintaining them. And also knowing when I need to pull back and care about myself, because if a relationship is too toxic, whether personal or professional, then my well-being comes first, and that self-care comes first. So I'm going to disengage from that and then move on.
And so you pride yourself on everybody knows that you're not fake, that what they're getting is always going to be authenticity.
I think most people that know me would definitely say that about me, yes.
Yeah, I can add to that. I also feel that I'm pretty genuine, and that that comes across in the way I deal with people. But I think maybe there's something in that question that is acknowledging the truth is, when we create professional relationships, when we try to build our network, in the back of our mind, or maybe the front of our mind, we know that we're making a relationship in order to help ourselves. We're trying to get something from it. So there's this part of us that, and I don't know if this is a woman thing, think about the gender issues that might be around this. We're looking to help ourselves, and we already feel guilty to look for that help because we think, look at me using people to help myself. It's like, yeah, exactly. We all use people to help ourselves, and we all get used to help other people. That's the nature of the relationship. So it's still, be an authentic, kind, intelligently, emotionally intelligent person, and be okay with the fact that if you want to get ahead in life, you often have to ask for what you want, and just be okay with that. Just don't be greedy about it. Don't be rude about it. But just be okay with asking for what you want from people, and understand that people will eventually be asking you too, and be kind to them and honest with them in the relationship.
I think that's one of the reasons that I find formal mentorship to be such a powerful relationship. I have both people I think of as mentors, and many mentees. And it's just like, you can articulate, we have a relationship where we care about each other. And in this relationship, one of us is helping the other and the other will help in return. And we are using each other for our skills because we're going to care about each other. And it's I don't know, it's its own thing. It's a form of friendship, but it's also a form of professionalism. And I think I'm a huge advocate of it.
And to piggyback and layer onto what Juliet and Laurie said, it takes a lot of energy to put into a relationship. And I know that oftentimes we're afraid to spring clean and just focus on those people that are giving back to us or that we really want to give to. So when Laurie talks about, we often have to utilize people, I'd like to emphasize that if somebody comes into your life and they can support your success, they can make a connection for you, they can introduce you to somebody, they can benefit you, you're not using them if you're authentically engaged with them. Perhaps you can help them out as well. So for me, there's a difference between having somebody feel used by you and utilizing their strengths or their connections or that rapport in the moment it's been given to you. And that's okay, because things unfold the way they're supposed to, right? And not everybody is a lifetime. Some people are a season and some people are a reason and why they come into our lives. We have a question from Bridget that I want to make sure to get to. She said, you made mention that there are 4 ways of a good listener. Can you share what those are again? Absolutely. So most people think that active listening is the highest level listening. It's not, it's only level 2. Active meaning you're there in mind, you're there in body. But the highest level listening is empathic. What falls in between, number 1 is passive. As your coach, and I consider my coach for each of you this evening, I do not want you to be a passive listener. That means that you're not really engaged with what's happening. You're simply there in the core of your body. Your spirit and your mind are not engaged. Next is active listening. That's the minimum I'd like you to be. The 3rd level is reflective. Are you able to reflect back through your body and your words and potentially the tone of your voice, what you're getting from the speaker? So if they're really seriously sad about something, you don't have to be sad, but you have to have more of a neutral voice so they know that you're reflecting back what they're giving you. And then finally, the empathic, where you understand on a deeper level, having experienced something similar or the same, how you can recognize what someone is going through. We want your questions. As I mentioned when we first started, this session is about you. It's what's top of mind for you. How can we, in the different industries that we represent, benefit you? So put your questions definitely in the chat box. We have a few more. How can women be undermining their credibility without knowing it? Where is the line between being direct and standing up for yourself and being seen as overly aggressive or worse? That is a great, great question. Let's start there. Where is the line between being overly direct or standing up for yourself and then being seen as aggressive or abrasive? Do you want to start with that one, Randi?
I absolutely do. This is a constant struggle. I have shared with Lauren in the past that not only being a woman, but honestly being a woman of color, I always have to walk on the fine line with communication and make sure that my body language is a certain way and that my tone maintains even when it's justified. I can be in a room in a conversation and watch it get heated and watch things that are said or just, body language, and it's okay, but it's not okay for me. And so I always have to be mindful of that. And I will always voice my opinion and get my point across unapologetically. And I'll preface sometime when I'm speaking and I know that it's like a point that I'm really trying to hammer home. Forget my tone for a second. Listen to what I'm saying. Listen to my message. Take the tone out of it. Take my body language out of it, because half the time I'm sitting because I'm very conscious of it. So I know not to, speak with my hands or stand up. I'm very even keeled when I'm trying to get my message across. Great communication is key. So I would think, to answer the question, that's where the line is drawn. making sure that you're an effective communicator so that there is no discrepancy between you being, overbearing or you being aggressive. A lot of that is unconscious bias, and it's not fair. And so, in fighting against that, all I can do is be me, and all I can do is know that every time I open my mouth, I'm communicating as effectively as I possibly can to get my point across in that moment.
Did Laurie or Juliet want to weigh in on that question?
I'm certainly happy to. I would say, I think the question is interesting the way it's phrased, because it says, where's the line between being direct, standing up for yourself, and being seen as overly aggressive? I mean, it's really, that's the pain in that question is we don't want to be seen in a certain way, but how do we control how we're seen? We're trying to stand up for ourselves, but people may be seeing us in other ways. And I think Randi makes excellent points in terms of, you have to learn some communication styles that are effective so that you're not, making your point aggressively, like you learn what aggressive looks like so that you can not look that way while you're still saying what you need to say. For me, in my career and my life experience, just based on who I am, the kind of person I am, my problem has been I get overly emotional. If I get upset or angry, sometimes, oh God, I one time cried at work. I had to go to the ladies' room and cry. And so bringing, I won't come across as overly aggressive, but I want to be able to stand up for myself without becoming emotional, which has been a hard lesson for me. And what I find has worked, and that I'm getting better at as I get older and get more experienced, is I really have to pause. And you don't always have the luxury. Sometimes you're in the moment and you have to take a deep breath in the moment and continue on. But often I'll get messages or I'll get things coming at me, and I'm in my office and I can stand up from my desk and walk away for a minute and come back clear. And then I'm able to communicate effectively without being emotional. And in other cases, it might be seen as aggressive. I'm just not an aggressive person. So I can stand up for myself. I can communicate for myself well, as long as I keep my emotions in check and I just say what I mean,
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to ask Juliet a different question. I'll weigh in first on this question because we're talking so much about communication. I'd like everybody who's tuning in to remember that research tells us that what we communicate, 55% of the message we communicate is nonverbal. It's before we even open our mouths. It starts from your micro expressions and goes through to your movement. So it's incredibly important that you know what your body is communicating, because it's going to set a tone before you even open your mouth. Number two, 38% of the impact of the message you deliver is how you say what you say. That's your vocal delivery. And there are 6 elements that can either make it seem that you're being aggressive, or it can make it seem that you're just being powerful and confident. And those 6 elements are pitch, pace, tone, articulation, volume, and inflection. So if you want to be direct, if you want to appear confident and not aggressive, what your body is communicating, how you sound, and your word choice is incredibly important, because only then, when people are receptive of what you're delivering, will they actually hear the message behind what you're delivering. So that's an important point. Juliet, I wanted to ask you, another question came up here. How can women be undermining their credibility without knowing it? Have you noticed how women undermine themselves without realizing it? Have you done that? Can you speak a little bit to that?
So I'm fortunate enough to work in a sector where there are a lot of female professionals and female executives. And I've been in very functional professional environments where everyone involved was female. And this is not an across the board statement, because there are many kind and thoughtful and careful men who you could insert into this scenario and have it work. But in other occasions, when you have a gender mixed scenario, you immediately have the functionality breaks down a little bit, because people are not listening to each other and receiving that third level of listening you were talking about in the same way. People are more focused on what they're saying. Mm-hmm. And so I think what happens where women can inadvertently undermine themselves is when we are as receptive and kind and patient, and when we're listening with the same attentiveness and kind of obligation that we do to other women, when people feel free to talk over us or to tell us how to think or how to express ourselves. And just, you know, not to put too fine a point on it, but as an editor, I found that when I edit women and when I edit men, I have a very different interaction, and I have to have a very different voice for those two conversations. Again, not across the board, it's not the same, but I know that if I don't take a very light hand with some of my female authors, they will go too far in changing their original voice and vision, because they'll take what I said so deeply to heart. They'll hear it so closely on that higher plane of listening. Whereas when I'm working with male authors, I sometimes have to be much more direct than and even, you know, I hate the word aggressive in this case, but more aggressive than I would if even wanted to have been naturally, because otherwise they won't receive my important point. So I do think that, you know, the way we undermine ourselves is to sometimes not calibrate for, I hate the word undermine, because it's not, we shouldn't have to reach beyond our natures to communicate in the way we want to communicate. But I do think that, let me throw it the other way around. To make a more receptive and healthy work environment, I think it's really important that we all do the listening you were talking about. I think it's really important that women make a point of listening really closely to other women, because the default is not necessarily that other people are listening to those women, and they may have really important things to say, and they may have been socially cultured to think what they have to say is not important, as Laurie was mentioning earlier. And then if you are a man, the thing that you can really do here is to listen, to be one of those listeners, and to take a breath before you speak, and realize that a woman may not have the courage or the stamina to fight through and say the thing that she really needs to say in this point, and give her a little more leeway.
Which is a great point. So for everybody who's zooming in our audience, share that point with the men in your lives, right? That maybe they need to give us a little breathing room, because not everybody feels that they can have a voice or knows how to get their voice heard. Something else I want to make sure that I share with you about the subtle nuances. We're talking about aggression. We're talking about being assertive. It's very important that when you refer to yourself, you say, I want to be assertive, because the minute you tell somebody, I'm trying to be more aggressive, it puts you in a negative spotlight. You always want to have a positive perception when you talk about yourself. So saying, I'm trying to be more assertive will always do that versus aggressive. I cannot believe how fast the time is going, and I promised you that what we're doing tonight is all about you. Your questions are most important to us. And there's a couple of others that came in. So in the few minutes that we have, I would like to ask our panelists, maybe Randi and Laurie, you could start with this one. This was, how can women show empathy without appearing weak or soft? What's the fine line there? How do we exude that characteristic that we know based on research is incredibly important for leaders to exude?
I think that it's hard to be a leader without being empathetic. That is definitely one of the qualities that a leader needs to have, because how can you really understand and have compassion for people that you're leading if you can't empathize with different situations? Case in point, the world that we're in now. When you brought up, we're in this virtual world, and how do we manage our time? And, you know, I know that there are a lot of women and men struggling with communicating to their superiors about childcare issues and not being able to be present at all of those same times. And if as a leader, you're not empathetic about someone's situation, even if that is not your current situation, then that's not being a leader. That's not having leadership qualities. So even if it's, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry, Laurie.
Because you've said that you have a very authentic persona, that people
Correct.
know that you speak, you're efficient, you're effective, you get it done.
Yes.
So when you show empathy, how do you counter the misperception that, oh, now she's being soft, now she's being weak? Is there something specific that you do or project so that you're not misperceived as, oh, here goes Randi being empathic again?
I guess communicating why I am empathizing with that person or situation, because someone on the outside, or even the person that you're being empathetic to, may not fully understand and may think that you're being soft. But again, going back to communication, effectively stating why you are taking the stance that you're taking and why you're empathizing with that person, I think is the way to let people know, I'm not being weak. I just want you to know that I hear you. Like we've been saying, I hear you, I understand. And although that may not be my situation, here's how we can deal with it so that I can help you do whatever it is that you need to do. I can help you feel heard. I can help you get over this hurdle or to the next level or whatever it is.
So my way of hearing you, to paraphrase your words, my way of showing you empathy is to build connection with you, to support your success. It's not me being weak or soft.
Correct.
That reason behind it. And
Yes.
Laurie, could you weigh in? Do you want to weigh in on this question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm feeling like, oh, we're going to run out of time. I have something I really want to say. I think what Randi was saying was great. And just to put a finer, to put my own fine point on it, I would say that being empathetic does not mean like, or even showing your empathy doesn't mean like being like, oh, honey, it's not that. It's making decisions and taking actions that demonstrate that you have heard and understood and been empathetic to what is coming from another person, digested that, and made good, responsive choices as a result. So my boss, my last boss was incredibly empathetic to me, but had a very, very curt almost, but that's a negative word. She had a very direct demeanor. But she was always, in her very direct way, demonstrating to me that she had really heard what I said and taken it into account and made choices as a result that I would be relieved by, because she heard me. She didn't have to give me a hug, right? To show empathy, she just had to make good choices that were helpful to me in my work setting. And I try to be the same way to people. I try to stay pretty even in my demeanor at work, although, I am a big soft mush when I can be, outside of certain settings. But really demonstrating empathy means making choices that demonstrate that you actually heard and acted on what you heard.
I love that perspective. My showing empathy is really making choices to support your success and make life easier for you. It's nothing about me being weak and soft.
Right.
I want to honor the fact that it is almost 8 o'clock. So what I'm going to ask is that each of our panelists, maybe for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, what are your final thoughts? We're talking tonight about women raising their voices, and this is for men as well. Men who need to have a voice, women who need to have a voice. How we can walk that balance between being assertive and being seen as aggressive. How we can show empathy and not be soft. Women are constantly being asked to walk a balance. And we want to be heard in the way that we perceive, not in the way people assume. So if you would, Randi, give me your 20-second takeaway for our audience from this panel tonight.
Sure, Lauren, no problem. I would say my tips to continue to raise your voice, effective communication, work on yourself. Again, regardless of what industry that we're in, we should all be continually working on ourselves. We should all be continually learning and developing and growing both hard and soft skills. So continue to definitely do that. I would say take advantage of networking and mentorships. Reach up and figure out what it is that you want to get to the next level and find a mentor, but also give back, reach back and help somebody else that is trying to get to maybe where you are. And I would just say, again, to continue to build relationships and make connections with people, whether they're in your field or not. Your mentor doesn't have to be in your same field. There's something that they can probably share, or you can probably mentor somebody, something that you know that you can impart, some wisdom that you can impart on them. And I think that is it. So I thank you all. Lauren knows I actually have to jump off.
Thank you,
for
Randi.
Another banquet I'm hosting. So I want to thank everybody. This was wonderful. And I look forward to sharing the recording when it becomes available.
So nice to meet you, Randi.
Nice to meet you all as well.
So Juliet, let's throw it to you. Could you give us your 20-second takeaway for our audience?
Absolutely. So for me, empathy is really a core philosophy for feminism. And as a storyteller, what has really changed my life is going out of my way to listen to the stories of women who don't necessarily always speak up and haven't been listened to. So my advice in general is to remind yourself what else there is in the world, and by asking a lady in your life or not in your life about her story. Try your mom or your aunt or a cousin or a really cranky lady who nobody likes who sits on a bench outside your building every day. Go get her story, and it will make us all better people.
Thank you. And Laurie?
I'm going to try to say this without sounding like it's a canned, boring, we already know that thing. It's just so important to have faith in yourself and not give up. If I could tell my younger self something when I look back on my life and I see how it was all unfolding for me, I felt so frustrated and so impatient in the moment. And I kept at it and kept at it, but I felt like giving up all the time. And I was discouraged often. And I don't know if that's everybody's experience. Some people seem to just rocket through things. But it just seems to me that if you're working really hard and you have faith and confidence and you're doing some of the other things you've heard, you've got to look for mentors. You've got to, you've got to put the work into it. But underneath all of that, you have to maintain this positive attitude and this self-confidence. And you have to learn to do that too. You have to find what is it that you can do to keep your own self positive and strong and healthy, and keep trying and not giving up and not allowing negative messages to make you feel negatively about yourself. So doing that work on yourself to stay positive and to keep working on it, and to see that if you just keep going and stay with it, you're going to get somewhere. That's important. I guess that's self-confidence, but even more than that, it's a kind of faith. It's keeping faith in yourself.
Thank you. And as I wrap up this evening, I want to leave you with, when you think about women raising their voices, I look at it from another perspective. From a communication standpoint, I look at it from, don't diminish your voice. Whether you are somebody who often advocates for herself or himself, if you have a voice sometimes and not other times, the key is that you don't diminish your voice by using undermining body language that makes you look weak or small in presence, that you don't diminish your voice by using words that undermine your credibility and your competence and your character, that you don't diminish your voice through the vocal delivery choices that you make. So when you think about how can I empower myself to have a voice, think about how are the choices I'm making being interpreted, and am I undermining the voice that I do have? Our goal tonight was to share with you different perspectives about how you can raise your voice. We wanted to leave you with strategies that you could utilize immediately. We thank you for your participation and your questions. My name is Laura Cayton. Galina is going to put our links to our books in the chat box, because that was a question that was asked of us if we would put them in there. And if you have any other questions, if you want to tune in to Harrison Library for their future events and more panel discussions, please go ahead and put that in the chat box, and Galina will address that. My name is Laura Cayton. Here's to your success. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good seeing so many familiar faces.
Bye-bye.
A nice group. There was a nice group in there. Like,
Yeah, lovely.
40 people.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I love the questions too. It was so much good energy, and thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of it. I feel like I learned a lot.
I think we all did. Yeah.
I think it's so helpful. I mean, like, if I could go back and give another answer to the whole thing, it's like participating in stuff like this. It does a lot for me. Like, I'm not taking notes, and I'm not gonna like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, I'm gonna do that. But I think it just is. It keeps you keep yourself inspired and engaged when you just it's great to be on a panel, but to attend and listen and ask some questions. I mean, that's really what it's all about. Just
I'm just wondering, what can men do to create more equal workplaces environment?
For me, honestly, the thing about listening, it can't be overstated.
Yeah.
I think that I work with some male colleagues who are so thoughtful and they always wait. They know that the women around them are going to be more reluctant to speak or to feel freedom of information, and they wait to let us talk. And I really appreciate how amazing those men are when I go into other groups, because I think men are trained to jump in right away and can easily overwhelm a conversation. So when men are so conscious of that, and that they do just listen, they take that extra effort to listen, it means everything. It changes the dynamic of everything.
It's funny, Juliet, when you started out, I thought the first word that jumped into my mind was listen.
Yeah.
Just listen.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to have some panel discussions and some male-oriented events, so that men can, if they're interested enough, if they're willing enough to actually attend something and say like, okay, I'd like to step up.
Yep.
Give them a listening seminar.
Yeah, I think men
are great.
Yeah, men are thinking about this so much, and I especially appreciate when they're attending forums like this, and they are opening themselves to what we're having to say, because they don't have to. And when they do it,
I heard you. Oh, I did. I said, okay.
Children, where are the children?
Speaking of children, I have to go because I've got a baby who's about to have bedtime. So,
It's
but
nice to see everybody.
Still on. Thank you.
Okay.
Stay in touch, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Be well.
Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.